Hello, my name is Garchompro, and I've been challenged since set 2. In this video, I'll be going through every legend in patch 13.16 and discussing how to play them. I'll be talking about what augments to take with them, as well as what compositions to play with them. I'll be going through all the legends from best to worst, starting with the best and ending with the worst. The first legend I have is going to be Ornn. I consider Ornn to be the best legend in the game, as does a lot of other people. Ornn is just a really good legend right now because basically all of his augments are clickable, so he's really safe. And then you actually have really good high roll potential because you can high roll your tomes and just get some really powerful emblems. There's a lot of really strong emblems currently. Typically what people will do is they'll tailor their board a little at 1-4 if they're playing Ornn, like towards the traits they want, and then they just immediately pop the tome at 2-1. The likelihood that you have nothing takeable at 2-1 is so low that you may as well just pop it. There's a lot of really good traits right now that you can use tome for. Shadow Isles is one of the best ones. It's just a really consistent top 4. You go 4-6 Shadow Isles, it's really powerful. In addition, Piltover, if you can get Piltover at 2-1, really strong. If you can get to, like a 20 stack T-Hex, you a lot of times will just win the game from there. Bastion is also really good. 6 Bastion of Philios is a really strong composition. Freljord's another good one. It's not great at 2-1, but if you have like an Ashe start, you can definitely take Freljord and it's going to scale really well into late game. Demacia is really good right now too, so Demacia is great. Shurima's having a resurgence, so Shurima is a great one as well. And then there's just a bunch of other solid ones, like I like Sorcerer. I think that's good. Even Targon's pretty good, although it's not great at 2-1. Challenger's another great one as well. 6-8 Challenger are really strong right now. After Yasuo buffs, it's just a good composition. So there's just a lot of really good tomes in the current meta. So of course, the Gold and Prismatic at 2-1 are going to be great for that. Branching Out is actually really solid for Silver. It's pretty high rolly because of course you don't actually get to choose it. But the majority of the tomes in the game right now are pretty solid. So Branching Out is definitely a solid Silver option, because you have really high potential to essentially just get a gold augment worth of value, right? If you get a Shadow Isles crest off of Branching Out, it's basically just a gold augment, and you're in a really good position. The 3-2 augments are all just going to be really consistent options for Ornn. You can just click these whenever your other options suck, and you just want something that's guaranteed solid. These aren't broken, they're not amazing, but they're definitely going to be slightly above average augments, so you can always just click these in case you low roll. And it's going to be the same thing with the 4-2 augments. All 3 of these are going to be solid in case you low roll. One note is that I typically only like Giant Grab Bag if I'm playing like a reroll composition though, or else you're not going to use the Lesser Champ Duplicator that well. And then Ornn's Grab Bag, of course, makes sure that you can utilize the Spatula. And as long as you keep those things in mind, Ornn is just a really consistent way to play the game right now. The other legend that I have in S tier is going to be Poro. The disadvantage of Poro, of course, is that you have to be willing to play like basically every different possible line and know how to play all the augments, so it definitely has a high barrier for entry. But if you do have that knowledge, Poro is very strong right now. That being said, if you are just looking for like a consistent legend that's going to be flexible, I do recommend just playing Ornn or Ezreal instead of Poro because they're going to be a little bit easier for you and you'll be a bit more consistent. Moving on to the A tier, the first legend I have is going to be Master Yi. Now the thing with Master Yi is he's really only amazing into 2 compositions, but those 2 compositions happen to be 2 of the best comps in the game right now. Pumping Up is fantastic in Aphelios, and it's also fantastic in Garen reroll, which are 2 of the strongest comps right now, so Master Yi actually works really well into those. The standard game plan for Master Yi is that you'll take Pumping Up at 2-1 and then play one of those 2 comps I just mentioned. Generally, Pumping Up 1 is not good, but Pumping Up 2 and 3 are fantastic. Going into like an AP composition or Challengers isn't great with Master Yi. You can theoretically do something like Shurima Azir, but it's usually not ideal. You'd rather just play like another legend if you're going to go into Azir. In terms of the 3-2 augments, you generally are not clicking the 3-2. The Gold Battle Ready is acceptable, but the Prismatic and Silver just suck. I would never click those. And then at 4-2, Gotta Go Fast is amazing if you're playing Garen. It'll allow him to move quicker, so that way he can just like spin onto a new enemy after he gets a kill, and he's not wasting part of his ultimate. In addition, if you end up playing like Sorcerers or Multicasters, Gotta Go Fast is great. It's fantastic with Vel'Koz. He has a really good synergy with the extra mana gain. So definitely recommend Gotta Go Fast if you're playing into like Vel'Koz. But if you're playing something like Aphelios, of course, don't click this augment because he's really not going to be benefiting it from that much. Next, we have Vladimir. Transfusion is just a solid augment in general. It's just a decent take at 2-1. That way, in case you low roll your early game, it doesn't feel that bad. You can end up scaling later. But even win streaking with Transfusion doesn't feel that bad anyways. So Vladimir just gives you a nice consistent combat power at 2-1 that can realistically flex into any composition. The 2 most popular compositions to go from Transfusion, though, are going to be Aphelios and Azir, because both of those units like to take a Rage Blade and ramp up during the fight. Playing like 7 Shurima Azir with Transfusion is fantastic, as is 6 Bastion Aphelios, so both of those work great with Vladimir. Vladimir's 3-2 is going to be the same as Master Yi's, in that you never click the Silver Prismatic, you sometimes click the Gold, but it's still a below average augment. And then at 4-2 we have the Ascensions. Gold Ascension did get buffed this patch. Generally, though, you're not clicking Ascension that much, but if you're playing a really tanky composition with Vladimir, it actually is clickable. So if you took like Transfusion and then you're playing something like 7 Shurima or 6 Bastion, you can definitely click Ascension. But if the main focus of your composition isn't being tanky, I wouldn't click Ascension. Like, you can take Transfusion and then play anything. Like, you could play like Challengers from it. That's completely acceptable. You could play Zeri from it. But those compositions aren't really about like scaling up throughout the fight and being super tanky. So I wouldn't be taking Ascension in those compositions. Final Ascension's a little different because it does give you the 15% at start of combat. So it's a decent fallback plan in compositions that are even a little faster. Like in something like Ionia or Challengers, it actually is somewhat acceptable to take Final Ascension. It's not one of the best augments for that composition, but it is clickable in case you low roll your other 4-2 options, but you would never take the other 2 Ascensions unless your comp is really, really tanky. In terms of the transfusions, the golden prismatic transfusions are fantastic. People do consider the silver transfusion to be a bit worse than them, but I do think it is still like a clickable one. So if your other options suck, you can feel free to click the silver transfusion, but there's definitely better silvers out there that you can find. Next we have Veigar, which is actually my legend of choice for this patch. I've been playing a lot of Veigar, having a lot of fun with it, and I think he's really, really strong. The thing with Veigar is insanely powerful into a select few compositions and not great into a lot of other ones, but it turns out that my comp pool actually lines up really well with Veigar, which is why I'm playing him. He's fantastic into Sorcerers, he's fantastic into Invokers, he's fantastic into Noxus, and he's strong into Challengers. A lot of other compositions don't like him. He's also fine into Luxazir as well. The reasoning for this is Jeweled Lotus is going to be good in the compositions that I just discussed. Whenever you're playing Veigar, I click Jeweled Lotus 2-1 like probably 80% of the time. The Silver Jeweled Lotus is fantastic. Don't click it if you have only tank items at 2-1 though. You do need to be making sure that your first item is a damage item. That way you can actually get the Jeweled Lotus on your carry. But if I have like a damage item I want to slam, I always click Jeweled Lotus 1. Jeweled Lotus 3 is one of the best prismatic combat augments, so I pretty much always click this. Jeweled Lotus 2 is definitely the weakest of the 3, but it's still very good. One thing to note whenever you're playing Jeweled Lotus is just make sure you're building like crit items, not Infinity Edge and Jeweled Gauntlet, because of course they don't have good synergy with Jeweled Lotus, because Jeweled Lotus already gives you the crit ability on your ability, but building stuff like Guardbreaker, Hand of Justice, Quicksilver actually goes a lot up in value whenever you have Jeweled Lotus. Something like Quicksilver on Darius is usually pretty bad, but it's actually solid whenever you have Jeweled Lotus. I'll even go stuff like Quicksilver on Vel'Koz, just for the crit chance if my items aren't working out that well. It's actually completely acceptable. Jeweled Lotus also makes Thief's Gloves go up in value quite a bit if you have Jeweled Lotus 2 or 3. A lot of times I'll just jam a Thief's Gloves on like my secondary carry, and they'll just have like 100% crit on their ability, and they'll actually do a solid amount of damage. In terms of 3-2, Tiny Power is actually a great augment. It's not great if you're playing a composition like Sorcerers that's giving you a bunch of AP already, because you're going to have diminishing returns. But in a lot of other compositions, Tiny Power is just going to be like a really solid option. I love it in Invokers, I love it in Challengers, I love it in Noxus. It's just good all around in a lot of different compositions, because of course your units love 80 AP and attack speed, so it just makes sense, and the numbers actually work out pretty well. I think the Silver and Prismatic are fantastic. The Gold is worse than them too, but I still think the Gold Tiny Power is an above average augment. So I definitely click Tiny Power a good amount of the time whenever I'm playing Veigar. And whenever you're Veigar, you basically never click Ascension. Ascension is clickable with Vladimir because Transfusion synergizes quite well with Ascension. You know, it makes you live longer. And so, of course, Ascension likes that. But with Veigar, you're trying to just blow up people at the start of the combat with, you know, Jeweled Lotus Tiny Power. You're just doing a bunch of immediate damage. So Ascension really has bad synergy with that. So you basically are never clicking Ascension whenever you're playing Veigar. Next, we have Ezreal. If you enjoyed Ornn in the past couple patches, I highly recommend just switching to Ezreal currently. I think Ezreal is the superior legend at the moment after Ornn suffered some nerfs. Ezreal is just a really strong way to get some early tempo and just save a lot of HP, because getting items in the early game is really powerful. You know, you're sitting there at 2-1 with like 1.5 items because you have 3 components. You take Buried Treasures 2, all of a sudden you have 3 items, which is just a huge leg up on everyone else in the lobby. So Ezreal just enables you to be really strong in the early game. He falls off a bit later in the game compared to some of the other legends, but if you can just, you know, have strong tempo and save HP, it's going to be completely fine. His 2-1s are solid. Buried Treasures 1 is one of the best silvers in the game, so highly recommend Buried Treasures 1. Buried Treasures 2 is definitely an above average gold augment, so it's always a great take at 2-1. I don't think Buried Treasures 3 is that good. I really don't like it. I would generally prefer to take another Prismatic. It's clickable. I'd say it's like slightly below average, so you generally should be looking for something else, but you can click it if you need to. And then similar to Urf, because Ezreal has the same 3-2s as Urf, all of these are going to be clickable at 3-2 in case you low roll your options. Again, they're not broken, but if you need a little bit of extra gold or your options just suck, you know, just get like a free extra item here, all of these are going to be clickable then. His 4-2s are not great. Well-Earned Comforts 3 is actually very good though, especially if you're clicking his 2-1 and 3-2, because of course you're going to have more components, so you're going to get a lot more value off of Well-Earned Comforts, and you're going to be able to just spread that value out to your units. The extra like 8% attack speed per item is actually really impactful, because getting 24% attack speed on your carry is a pretty big deal. Well-Earned Comforts 1 and 2 are basically a never click though. They're really bad augments. I would just never click these in my life. For my final A tier legend, I have Caitlyn. Now with Caitlyn, don't bother with her 3-2 and 4-2 augments. These are just completely trash. but her 2-1 augments are going to be the ones that we're actually looking at taking, and Caitlyn is going to be great if you want to just have strong early tempo and just get like consistent top 4s with strong board. She also gives you a good amount of econ based off her 2-1 augments, so you can usually just go level 8 pretty cleanly with her. 1, 2, 3 is a solid option. It's about average for silver augment, so click it if you have nothing else that's good, but it's definitely not broken. Starter kit is interesting because you can definitely high roll it in certain positions. Some of the starter kits are good, some of them are bad. If you get something like Draven at 2-1, you're just probably going to cry and just bot 4 immediately. But some of the starter kits I think are actually quite good. I actually really think Shen is good. You can go play Invokers with Shen. In addition, something like Lux, you just play Sorcerers is really good. So there's a bunch of good starter kits, but also a lot of trash starter kits, so it's a pretty flip-floppy augment. I don't love it, but I do know some people like it. Stars Are Born, however, is the main reason that you're going to be playing Caitlyn, because this augment is fantastic. It gives you an insane amount of gold. You can usually just make like 10 gold at like 2-2 or something with Caitlyn. It's really strong. You're going to have a strong board early every time because you get a guaranteed 2-star 2 cost and a 2-star 1 cost. And it's just great. Typically, you're going to want to take a 2-star 2 cost and a 2-star 1 cost that are going to synergize together. So something like, Swain plus Samira, Swain plus Malzahar, Malzahar plus Kassadin, and the like, stuff like that. Generally, I think it's a bit better to go 2-star frontliner, 1-star backliner, but sometimes you'll go like 2-star backliner, 1-star frontliner, especially if you get like a Soraka. Soraka's a fantastic 2-star backliner, so feel free to make like a Soraka 2 and then just like 1-star whatever frontliner you need to support that Soraka. One other note to make with Stars Are Born is that if you see a good unit in your like 1-4 shop, like you have a 2 cost in that shop that you want to 2-star, it's recommended to lock your shop at 1-4, because the likelihood that you get Stars Are Born is like above 60% or something at 2-1, and so you have a really high chance of just being able to 2-star that. So if you see like a Swain in your 1-4 shop, just lock that and get that on your next shop. If you don't see anything that you want in your 1-4 shop, it's also recommended to pre-level at 1-4. That way you go immediately level 4 at 2-1 and you get that level 4 shop, so you have higher odds at the 2 costs, so you have a much higher chance of getting one of the good 2 costs with Caitlyn. Moving on to the B tier, we first have Lee Sin. Now, Lee Sin is interesting because he's actually a really powerful legend, but he kind of lives and dies by how much reroll is in the meta. The meta right now is not super reroll heavy. If we move back into a meta where there's a lot of like Kale reroll or whatnot, Lee Sin will probably become an S tier legend again. But in the current state of things, I have him in the B tier because there's generally just not a ton of reroll that people are playing. People are generally playing a lot of 4-cost units, so Lee Sin's a bit worse. That being said, with Lee Sin, Bronze Ticket and Trade Sector are definitely solid options at 2-1 that you can take. They just enable you to hit your like 1 cost or 2 cost boards a bit easier. Trade Sector can actually easily be played with a 3-cost reroll. I actually really like Trade Sector into something like Karma or Vel'Koz reroll, because you can generally just like start leveling really quickly and get those free extra shops, and you can just like 2-star your board, get a bunch of like 2-star 2 and 3 costs, and just win streak throughout stage 2 and 3. Shopping Spree is another solid one. You don't really play reroll from Shopping Spree. You generally want to go to level 7 with Shopping Spree and then burn all your rerolls then. You can also burn some of your rerolls at level 6 if you need to stabilize, but generally you want to be playing towards a composition that's going at least level 7, so you're usually playing towards like a 4-cost board with this, because if you're sitting here at like level 4, level 5 rolling for Kale with Shopping Spree, you're getting just like a couple extra shop rolls and it's not worth a prismatic. What makes Lee Sin really good is going to be his 3-2. His 3-2 is fantastic if you're playing any reroll composition. Just being able to get an extra lesser champion duplicator to just get like a free one of your unit enables you to just hit them so much quicker, and then it also gives you a bit more gold to roll. So his 3-2 is amazing, and then his 4-2 is really bad. I would never click the Lee Sin 4-2. These are some of the worst augments in the game. The next legend I have in B tier is going to be Ornn. Ornn is still a solid legend, but he's definitely worse after the patch, especially in regards to his portable forge at 2-1. Getting nerfed to only 2 items given, it just makes it a lot worse. The likelihood that you low roll and have stuff that's just unclickable is really, really high. Stuff like Zhonya's Paradox just not good at 2-1. Stuff like Obsidian Cleaver and Ronduin's is generally just not considered that good. So the likelihood that you low roll 2 of them is pretty high. So Portable Forge is definitely still a solid option at 2-1, but it is definitely just not the super consistent powerhouse that it previously was, making Ornn a lot worse because the 2-1 gold is the most important augment for every legend. Because of course, it's the one you want to guarantee that you have at 2-1, and the gold is the most likely to occur. So a lot of legends just live and die by their 2-1 gold augment. Latent Forge is okay. I don't love it. I think it's about an average silver augment. You have a lot of, lower tempo in the early game, but it does potentially high roll a bit harder at 3-5. So if you have like a weaker opener anyways, Latent Forge is solid. Portable Forge is still okay. If you want to know how to play around the Ornn augments, I made a video covering how to play around all the different Ornn items a couple weeks ago, so recommend checking out that. And then Living Forge, I think Living Forge is quite good. I think it's definitely an above average prismatic. You just take this and then, you have 2 Ornn items at 4-1, which is actually like power neutral to slightly better than a normal prismatic. And then at 6-1, you have 3. So if you can get to that late game, Living Forge is just really powerful. And you actually don't really feel like you're that behind in the early game anyways. So I do really like Living Forge. The Ornn 3-2s are all solid. Well, medium and small forge are solid. I think large forge is atrocious. I would not click large forge. I think it's really bad. I mean, like the gold augment is an Ornn item anvil. And so the prismatic here is you just get an extra component. Like your prismatic is an extra component here. Not very good. Medium forge and small forge though are great options if you're like low rolling and you just want something consistent to give you a bit of extra gold. So they're definitely going to be solid options. And then at 4-2, jobs done and job well done, again, are good options in case you're low rolling. They're a bit worse than small forge and medium forge in my opinion, because getting items at 4-2 is a bit worse than getting items at 3-2, but they're definitely solid options in case your other options suck. Masterful job is okay. I think it's a lot more clickable than large forge, but I still think it's not a good augment, so I would recommend not clicking Masterful Forge. Next up, we have Aurelion Sol. Aurelion Sol keeps getting nerfed. He was a powerhouse at a certain point, but now he's kind of more of a shell of his former self. He's still okay for a couple reasons, but he's definitely not a great legend. But I do have him in B tier because he does have potential to pop off. Cutting Corner is just not a good augment, wouldn't click it. Patient Study, I think, is definitely below average for a gold augment. It is takeable, it's decent, but I really don't like it. The main reason you're clicking Aurelion Sol, though, is Level Up. Level Up is still an amazing augment. It's fantastic. It's a bit worse this patch than it was previously because Ahri and Bel'Veth got nerfs, so going fast 9 is a bit weaker, but it's still really strong. If you get to that capped out level 9 full 2-star legendary board, you still win the game most of the time, so Level Up is still just a great augment. His 3-2s suck, don't click Knowledge Download, and 4-2s, they got nerfed as well, so it pays to learn is a bit worse. It is still clickable, especially if you have Level Up. Level Up into pays to learn is still going to be solid. They did nerf the gold, but the extra gold is still going to be nice. So it is nice if you just need like that extra push to get to level 8 or level 9, because you wouldn't be able to get there otherwise. But it pays to learn is like definitely not an amazing augment, so you really would only click it if you're behind on econ. But yeah, level up is really the only like premier augment for Aurelion Sol, and you generally just want to push for level 9 with level up. Otherwise, if you're going like Patient Study, you just want to play for like a level 8 composition, some like expensive 4-cost board, something like Lux Azir. Play for that, and you should be okay to get like a top 4 that way. Moving on to the C tier, we first have Bard. Bard is an okay legend, but I don't think he's amazing. Caretaker's Ally, his silver is pretty bad. I wouldn't recommend clicking it. Most of the 2 costs are not that great to reroll right now, so it's just really not that good. Caretaker's Favor, the gold one, is okay. I think if you're in like an Econ Galaxy, something like Scuttle Puddle, it's actually pretty fine, because you can guarantee you get to level 8. That being said, I don't think it's great. Like if you compare it to Buried Treasures 2, which is the Ezreal gold, I think it's just a lot worse. I'd rather have 3 items at the start of the game than 4 items at the end of the game, because again, items fall off in power as the game progresses. Having more items early is good. Bard, is going to be giving you the items later. It's still a fine augment, but I don't think it's amazing. Caretaker's Chosen is definitely Bard's best augment, though. Caretaker's Chosen is actually very good, especially if you have like an econ start, something like Scuttle Puddle or Glass Industries or whatnot. Once you get to level 7, being able to get a Radiant item, and then you just have like an extra item and a half on top of that, is actually really powerful. So Caretaker's Chosen is a great option, and if you're clicking Bard, it's probably for Caretaker's Chosen. Small Forge, Medium Forge, same thing with Ornn, they're definitely solid options. Large Forge sucks. And then all of the Seeing Doubles just suck. I wouldn't recommend clicking these. Just getting like one random item that you have no control over is really bad. The likelihood that you low roll it is super, super high. So definitely do not recommend taking Seeing Double. If you're looking for items though, I generally just recommend playing Ezreal. And if you're looking for like scaling power, I recommend just playing Vladimir or Master Yi, because Bard is kind of weird in that he's weaker than something like Ezreal early, but he's also weaker than something like Master Yi or Vladimir late game. So he kind of has like a weird identity that just makes him a little awkward to play, unless you're playing like Caretaker's Chosen, which is a good augment. But even then, I think like pumping up 3 or Transfusion 3 is just better anyways. So yeah, Bard's a little awkward. The other legend I have in C tier is going to be Pengu. The reason Pengu is actually somewhat viable is the fact that Piltover is so strong. If you have a Piltover start, all of Pengu's 2-1 augments are fantastic, right? Because they're going to allow you to lose streak a lot longer. You can get an extra 1 or 2 rounds, which once you get to higher stacks, 1 or 2 rounds is going to be giving you like even more stacks, because the stacks you gain increases based off how much your lose streak is. And so it's just really powerful. You can get an extremely powerful cash out and just win the game a lot of the time if you have like Tiny Titans or Metabolic Accelerator. That being said, unless you have a Piltover start, I don't recommend them. I think they're pretty bad augments otherwise. Tiniest Titan, however, is a fantastic augment always. So one of the other reasons that you would take Pengu is just Tiniest Titan's a great augment. You can play anything from Tiniest Titan, it really doesn't matter. It just gives you so much HP, so much gold, that it's just a great consistent augment. You top 4 so much of the time off of it, because it's really hard to bot for when you have that much extra HP and that much extra gold. In terms of the 3-2s, not good. They're like somewhat clickable if your other options completely suck, but even then, Generally don't recommend clicking them. And then the 4-2s are actually pretty solid. They're the same as Earths. So these are, a clickable option in case you low roll. They're, again, not overpowered or anything. They're not amazing, but they're about average for an augment. So if you need something, you can always click them. Finally, I'm going to go through the D tier legends. I wouldn't recommend playing any of the D tier legends, but I'll cover them anyways. Twisted Fate, not that great right now. None of the carries care that much about having perfect items. Yes, having perfect items is fine, but like the gap between perfect items and just solid items on a unit right now, not that big of a deal, and you'd rather just be getting like combat power elsewhere, or like, more items off of Ezreal. So Twisted Fate kind of struggling right now because Pandora's items is just generally not considered that good. It's even worse right now because at Raptors, we actually get a component anvil as well. So we have a bit more control over the items. So Twisted Fate got like a small nerf that way inadvertently. The 3-2 is also pretty bad. Same thing with Pengu. These just aren't that good. And then Seeing Double is just also a really bad augment like I talked about with Bard. So Twisted Fate kind of just struggles right now. No real good items. You can play Pandora's items into reroll compositions, but nothing in the meta right now really cares that much about it. So it's just not great. The next one I have is going to be Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench is just not amazing. There's other legends that can give you a bit of gold if you want a bit of extra econ. If you want a lot of econ, I recommend just going Aurelion Sol. I think he's going to be a lot more consistent. Something like Caitlyn gives you a lot of money as well, especially with her gold augment. So she's just like a better version of Tahm Kench a lot of the time. And then even like, stuff like Earth and Ornn and the like actually give you gold on like their 3-2 augments. So if you want like a little bit of extra econ, you can go those. But if you want a lot of extra econ, I would recommend just going Aurelion Sol. AFK is a pretty solid augment. It's not amazing, but it's definitely like probably a little above average for silver. Rich Get Richer is a pretty bad augment. Really just don't recommend it. If you compare it to something like Stars Are Born, it's just a lot worse. It just doesn't give you enough gold to really justify it. Hedge Fund is also pretty bad, especially at 2-1. Just compared to other prismatics, there's so many powerful prismatics in the game right now. The Hedge Fund really just can't compare it. Like if you compare Hedge Fund to Level Up, it's very clear that Level Up is just the better augment if you just watch how they play. These augments just aren't that great. Balanced budgets all suck, and then money also just sucks. Like these 4-2 augments are also really trash. So Tahm Kench only has like one good augment, and then like Rich Get Richer also sucks, Hedge Fund also sucks. So yeah, his augments just really aren't that good right now. And then the final legend I have is going to be Draven. Draven's interesting. His 3-2, 4-2 suck. I mean, we already discussed these augments, so they're just not good. I wouldn't click them. 2-1's interesting. If you have a good opener, you can definitely consider taking Spoils of War. The one thing I'd say about Spoils of War that I don't like is it forces you to be strong, but it doesn't give you any combat power, and it's really hard to be strong when you're down a combat augment, especially in the early game, because, you're sitting there with one augment, everyone else also has one augment. If they have a combat augment and you don't, it's really hard to make up that difference. Maybe if you're like in late game and you have 2 combat augments and they have 3, not as big of a deal, but when you're down like your only augment, it's pretty hard to consistently be strong with Draven, so he ends up being pretty inconsistent. Sometimes he can pop off pretty hard. If you can get a win streak going because you high roll your early game, you can do well with Draven. But generally speaking, I think there's just more consistent legends out there, so I generally just don't like Draven, especially because his 3-2 and 4-2 augments suck. When it's all said and done, this is what my current tier list looks like. This is, of course, subject to change. If like reroll becomes meta soon because people figure out some like broken reroll comp, maybe Lee Sin moves up to S tier. But as of the meta right now, this is what I consider to be the current tier list. Within 24 hours, I'll also be releasing a video covering the best comps for the current patch, as well as how to play those. So make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for that, and thank you for watching.